What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Ancient Wisdom, your weekly Pokemon TCG podcast. This is Corey Roush. With me, as always, is DJ Keener. DJ, how are you today?
Hey, what's up, Corey? Doing well, man. Happy to be here. How are you?
Good, 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 good. We're going a little bit early this week because we decided, like, while there is like online and there's a regional this weekend, the real thing to talk about for us this week, and I think for most people who are not traveling to Liverpool this
Mhm.
weekend, is Crown Zenith releasing this week. Not a hugely meta-defining set in regards to like a ton of changes, but there's a few cards that I know we wanted to touch on, and the art in this set is absolutely fantastic. Like I feel like we could do like a 3-hour podcast just going through each art and just reacting.
Yeah, I think we could literally have set this up with the entire like trainer gallery, alt art, whatever they're all called. I know there's a couple different sets of like special arts in here, and just have literally gone through a slideshow of them. Just continues to go. Oh yeah, that one's cool. Oh yeah, that one's cool.
Yep, yep.
This was the first time since I've started playing Pokemon again. So, throughout the entire pandemic, where when asked if I wanted to like pre-order any product, my immediate answer was I will take as much as you can give me because these cards are so cool.
Yeah, it's weird because like looking at the set, I like because I did as well, and I'm like, wait a minute, did I really want to do this? Because most of this set is
Oh, it's
garbage.
so
Like,
bad, but the cool cards are so cool.
yeah, so if like anything cool I hit, I'm gonna be happy. So like, you just kind of deal with it.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
you have to take your lumps on that. I mean, here's the issue, right? If I don't, I'm going to be waiting for stuff to either get turned into the store or for me to go to an event, and I'm just going to end up getting them anyway. And at least this way, like I can entertain myself for a little bit, put some codes online, hopefully get some gems and crap. Because every time I want to build something stupid, I don't have the currency to do it. So
Yeah, though that's the other thing, right? Is that I know I'm gonna want to get some like I don't want to have to craft radiants or like stuff like that online because I think they're awkwardly more expensive than they should be. So, um,
yes, as I've learned from wanting to craft radiant or amazing rares as well, it's
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah. So, I'm definitely excited. We might be getting it whenever we go next time we go in. I'm not sure. It all depends on when it arrives, but I know we both pre-ordered a bunch and
Yeah.
um there, like I said, there's not a ton of new cards, and even then, there's some new cards that I don't think are really worth talking about in terms of competitive play. So I'll be surprised that, like, I made a list of cards like that are new that I wanted to talk about, and
Mhm.
what I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Like I said, that's not all the new cards, but those are all the new cards that I'm generally interested in. So I'm interested. I'm kind of you surprised me last time when we did our first big set review was Silver Tempest, and we were kind of a little bit different on that. So I'm interested to see if that happens again. But
I'm gonna start with a full disclosure here. I don't know which cards are new, so there are a couple cards
that's
in here that I've picked out that I thought, oh, that card's neat. Not necessarily good, neat. That I'm not sure are new or not.
well, that'll be funny too. So I can appreciate that. And then at the end, I kind of wanted to touch on Liverpool just briefly
Yeah, just talk
because
about it a bit.
yeah. So but let's get started. What is the first card you want to kind of call out from Crown Zenith?
Yeah, so I don't know. I know we're not really doing this in like a top whatever
Yeah,
fashion or anything. So I'm just gonna mention a card that, just like to start here, let's just ease ourselves in. That this is one of the ones that I'm not sure if it's new or not, and it's also definitely not good. Um, is the Absol in this set new that like Lost Stone's a random card from your opponent's hand?
I
Hand disruption is like such a powerful effect, and I would be surprised if I missed that. But its attack is so expensive that there's like no way it's good.
okay. I'm glad you actually asked that one because that's one of the ones that I don't know if it is new because I've never seen that card before, but also like no one like, and again, it could just be because it's like not good, but I've not seen anyone say anything about it. Let me see. There was an Absol in Astral Radiance. Is that's not no, that's the set before. So no, I think
Yeah, it looks new to me.
it is a new card. It is I was immediately intrigued because I saw like the colors that are typically on the Lost Zone cards. I was like, ooh, maybe this is good. And like you said, it's not awesome, but it's neat.
Yeah, it's just a cool card. I mean, I think hand disruption is pretty underrepresented in the Pokemon TCG.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, it's like a difficult effect to get a lot of value out of a lot of the time because hands are so easy to refill. So, a lot of the situations where you're able to take cards out of your opponent's hand, you're still like hoping they don't top deck their copy of Research and have a full hand again. But lost owning your opponent's cards is also actually really powerful. Like, it's largely used as a like proactive mechanic currently, other than Lost City, that is used as disruption. And Vacuum isn't really like lost owning those cards isn't normally hyper relevant. It just happens to lost own them. But like taking cards out of your opponent's hand can be really relevant disruption when they go to the lost zone instead of the discard.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I think that this seems like the kind of card that if that like I would not be surprised if in a year and a half Xander was playing in a control deck because
Yeah, well, I think the problem with that is the Luxray V does something very similar,
yeah,
and probably better. But
yeah, I'm being very like that, but like my okay, my greater point is that I don't like if this
no,
is
no,
the
I
way to
agree with
see
you.
play, it is in a deck like that. It's not
For
going to
sure,
be in
for
like
sure.
a because it is awkward to power up. It's awkward to like kind of like get the full use out of it. But if you are, it's for a specific reason.
Hmm.
So I'm like yeah, I think the card is like I'm not. It's not immediate bulk like necessarily everything else, but it's also probably
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not that far off.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that was the first one I wanted to call out, just because I thought it was a cool card that I didn't know existed. And I don't know, these are like sort of honorable mentions because I just kind of wanted to talk about the cards briefly, and I don't have a lot to say about them. So, I guess, do you have any other like kind of neat random cards you want to talk about?
That are on that level. Like there are a
I have
couple that I
another
think
one, if not.
there's a couple that I think you might be higher on than me, so I'll save those for later. But I like one thing I would call out, and it's very like I've mentioned it on here before, but I want to mention it again since we're finally doing Crown Zenith. I think the Bidoof is worth keeping in mind.
Oh, that was on
Uh,
my list as potentially the best card in the set. So,
okay, so yeah, I mean, with like,
like, it's the most boring, unexciting card in the set, but like, that's the only one in here that I'm going to guarantee you with 100% certainty is good.
yeah, because it's 100% going to see play because I mean, Bibarel Alliance have already like they've won a world championship. They're going to they already
Yeah,
do
it's not
see
going anywhere.
marginal play, and like it only gets better post
Yeah,
rotation.
it
So
doesn't rotate. This is clearly the best Bidoof. Bibarel staying good. But
yeah.
like, it's the most boring, unexciting card possible, and there's not even anything interesting about it. It's just like, it's probably not strictly better than the other ones, but there are so few applications where this isn't the best Bidoof that like, I don't have much to say about it other than this card is clearly an upgrade, and I'm going to try to get an art set of them.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, right? Is it has an art set, and yeah, that's sick. Even the regular art looks like I mean, he's just sitting there
He's just
happily
doofing.
chomping on a tree stump. Yeah, he is very doof.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So I'll call out my other like goofy card in the set that I think might be decent. And this was another one that I actually did check this one, so I'm sure it's no. Is the Guru. Um, its
yeah,
first attack is just choose a supporter from your or from your opponent's discard pile. Yeah, I read it wrong. That's unfortunate. I thought we could be proactive with this and copy one out of our own discard. But still, that's an interesting effect, and I'm always going to call out Guru on here because it is. I mean, it's in our logo. It's one of our favorite Pokemon. Uh, yeah, he's the goat. So we'll call out Guru every time we can.
yeah. No, I agree with that way more than I should.
Unfortunately, this is not resource management, but hey, we'll take it.
Maybe one day, maybe they'll mess up again.
Your opponent will screw up, put a Roxanne in their graveyard, discard pile, whatever it's called in this game, and it's basically resource management then.
Sure.
Close.
Yeah, we'll go with close. Close is fine with
It's
me.
real
I'm not gonna.
close.
It's real close. So the card I thought you were going to call out, and we talked about it. We actually talked about it offline, and I don't know if it goes into this category or the other category. I know you said you kind of want to build with it. Is the Luxray.
Oh
So
yeah, the Luxray is going to be something that I would talk about more than that one. And I think the Luxray is really, really interesting. And so, for those of you who haven't read the Luxray from the set, there's actually two Luxrays in here, which is unnecessarily confusing. Um, the cool one has the ability Explosiveness, which is if it's in your starting hand during setup, you can put it face down as your active Pokemon. And Luxray is normally a stage 2, so obviously that's big time cheating. And for like your basic starter, it's got 160 HP, which isn't bad. And for colorless, it attacks for 50 and searches your deck for up to 2 trainer cards, reveal them, put them into your hand. Um, Number one, that card's just sweet. I dig the cards that let you cheat on setup and do different things. That's just like a unique effect. It's also really powerful, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and it's another unique build around because you have to build your deck specifically to starting it because it's not worth like rare candying into it, right? So you need to start it and then take advantage of that ability to both deal damage and search disruption every single turn. And previously, there was a Togekiss VMAX deck that did basically the same thing, right? So
Mhm.
concept is sort of proven. This is a lot smaller, and I don't know how you how you deal with the fact that if you like just play like 4 of these or something, you have one 160 HP Pokemon for the entire game, but you know, hopefully there's dolls or some way we can figure to work around that. I don't know.
Something else that I would call out, and this is probably not something that even came to your like that would have come to your mind because I
Mm.
actually don't know if you were playing during this format, so that's part of it as well. But back in 2016, and I feel even more relevant calling this out because of how we're kind of transitioning into a new format that looks like it may be more evolution dependent. There was a Talonflame that was inarguably better, but very same concept, where stage two could play it in the active if it was your opener. Its attack was Arrow Blitz for a colorless, did 40 and let you search for 2 cards and put them in your hand afterwards. So that
Oh
difference
yeah.
of two, but that was a 4 of in a Worlds deck in Greninja. No one really liked Greninja Break, but like being able to kind of set up like that and having that as something to kind of pivot out early,
Hmm.
it's a powerful effect. Like you said, it is a build around, and I think that this is the kind of thing that we have to probably get another, like, I don't mean to keep calling out rotation, but right now we're not in this like evolution dependent format
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
but I think when we are, and it becomes more easy to build around in that regard.
Well,
And
I
I do
mean,
think,
there's a world where like it depends. You have to kind of look at your numbers, I guess, like what your odds you want to be to start this versus does your deck work if you either like have to evolve into it or if you have whatever other basics in your deck. In some games, you spike, you start with the Luxray and play that way, versus some games you start with whatever other basic. But I think it presents an interesting deck building challenge, and
hmm
I mean, again, it's very powerful, right? So
hmm
whether it's good or not is kind of separate. Those two things don't like always line up, which is interesting to say because it seems like they should most of the time. But like this is good, like strong. I just don't know exactly how you make a deck function.
yeah, it's interesting to me that the spiritual successor also to that Greninja deck, because like, so that example, they were able to play three, so they played 4 Talonflame and three
Mm-hmm.
Froakie, and those were your only starters
Yeah.
because you had the what's the middle one for Frogadier that could get additional Frogadiers out of the deck and just put them on the bench as a basic for its attack. So
Oh, okay.
we do have a uh Kirlia that does that for a Gardevoir that we are getting a bigger version of in this next set. And I'm actually looking as we're talking because yes, there is a better version of Kirlia right now that does trade, but
Yeah.
or it's what was
Refinement.
it, refinement. But what's interesting about this Kirlia that actually lets you get multiple copies out is its attack Mirage Step says search your deck for up to 3 Kirlia and put them onto your bench and then shuffle your deck. So it does not have to be Mirage Step. So you could just have a split or like a three
Yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah.
I mean I'm deep in
No,
the
that's
tank there,
interesting. I mean,
but
and so one of the unfortunate things here is, I mean, and maybe it works with the Gardevoir EX, just using the Gardevoir EX to like power themselves up. Or, I mean, I know there's some different Gallades and stuff. I'm not sure what
mhm,
rotates from that aspect. We haven't really looked too much at rotation yet.
no.
But I mean, yeah, there could definitely be something there where you just play like this and Ralts, and then you can, you know, play like a fair Gardevoir game if you happen to start Ralts, and if you start this, you can start the game off this way, heavy disruption, chip some damage in as you set up. So, I mean, that's it. You're like guaranteed to set up basically if you start this, right? Your opponent's probably not killing something with 160 turn one unless we like right now that doesn't really happen. I should say, it could, but that's just not how the format looks right this second.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know what we're getting for the most part in Scarlet Violet, though I haven't looked too deeply, but I have to assume that that doesn't change drastically.
It doesn't seem
Barring
like it.
some like the thing that attacks the most consistently turn one for decent damage is Cramorant, right? And that's never killing this. So
And awkwardly enough, with some sort of, even if it's a slight damage modification or like Vitality Band or something like
mhm.
that, which we're getting back, this one shots Cramorant in return because of the
Yeah,
weakness.
yeah.
So it's an interesting, like I think that when I first saw this card, I was like, well, this is cute. This is a cool legacy card, but I don't think that this is something that is going to immediately catch on. And then the more I think about it, I don't know that it's ever going to be like like in the best deck or something like that. But
I would doubt that it is. It's just
there's
too
more merit
inherently
to it.
inconsistent too. I mean, you start running numbers, and even in like the best case scenarios, you're not consistently starting with this guy, short of playing like just these or like one other thing or whatever. And you have to
Yeah.
kind of, it's like the kind of deck too where right now there's not a ton of local play, so this is less relevant. But like a lot of Pokemon is played in best of ones, and you like if you hit 80% of the time, which like I didn't do the hyper geometric. I'm sure that's not the exact number. If you played this plus one other basic or something, though, that would be 4 out of 5. You'd get what I'm saying.
Yep.
Um, even if you hit 80% of the time, like in a 5 round League Cup challenge, whatever, whichever one that is. Like you can't really afford to have your miss be in like a single elim game when you need the points. And since so much of Pokemon is played best of one, when that level comes back, that's just like not a deck you can play in those environments. I mean,
Yeah.
you can. You just have to like,
It has to be your day.
you're
Yeah.
real brave, right? But like
Yeah.
in a best 2 out of 3, interestingly, like you really can whiff, right? That's something that
Mhm.
like we've kind of learned and worked on in other games where like you're fine to play a deck that just punts some games, or maybe if you don't know a specific like tech in your opponent's deck, it's fine to just lose a game, and as long as you are able to win once you know. So, um, I don't know. It's interesting because that definitely means like depending on level of play, this card's better or worse.
Yeah. But my overall point was the more I think about it, the more there's a lot more potential there, and
Mm-hmm.
that like for a set that we were already down on, that's promising to me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's not necessarily something that will be relevant for this, but I mean, we do have electric support in Scarlet Violet. It doesn't play especially well with this from the cards that I've read, but it is an electric Pokemon, so there might be something there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, okay, is there any of the like lower tier stuff you wanted to talk about since I kind of jumped ahead
No,
before we
no,
get into
I'm actually super on board with that sort. That's probably like the next card on the list.
okay.
I think I would probably rate that and like Reggie V Star in the same tier of cards that probably aren't actually good, but they're interesting.
Yeah, I don't have Reggie
Um,
V Star on here at all, so let's touch on that real quick.
so, and this is another like I don't actually think this card is likely to be good. And looking ahead, the thing that I kind of liked about it actually is pretty quickly outclassed. Funny enough, but something that I thought was interesting is it's big for a V Star. It's got a lot of health. You can amp that up a little more even with something like a big charm or whatever, putting it into a very VMAX area HP. It's colorless. You can put V Guard energy on it, which I just thought was like interesting as far as being a tanky guy that attacks for decent damage. That being said, the Gyarados, I guess, doesn't outclass this, but like the Gyarados from Scarlet Violet is also a stage 1 with 300 HP. So, there's some interesting pieces there to whether we're going to get stage 1s to be bigger. Like you said, evolution being a little more emphasized, and it kind of seems like big HP but smaller attack boxes seems to be like the trend coming forward. And I hate to talk too much about SV because we have some events with this before Scarlet Violet comes out. Um, but yeah, I just think the card's interesting, and I also think the V Star power, while not especially insane or powerful, is good. So the V Star is Star Guardian. It's you can only use this if your opponent has one prize card remaining. Discard one of their bench Pokemon and all cards attached to it. There's situations where that can be really really strong, and
Yeah,
also situations against certain decks where that can just you can bench your opponent with that. The attack does 230. Currently, we still have powerful colorless energy. We have Choice Belt. Um, it's not unreasonable to see this attack for like 320. Even more than that if you have more powerful colorlesses, obviously. Kill whatever thing off your opponent's bench, knock out their guy, end the game. Again, don't necessarily think this one's actually good, but it's an interesting card, and it's colorless, so we've got a lot of energies to play with right now, which is cool.
yeah. I think the point you made about post Scarlet Violet is actually makes this card a little bit better
Yeah.
because it is in line. Like right now, that looks really bulky for a V Star, but it is right in line with what we're going to be seeing with the stage one
Mm-hmm.
uh EXs. And the 230 number is relevant because it one shots both Koraidon and Miraidon. If either and or both see play, it
Right.
does one shot those while not like
Well, and it still is going to one shot all the basic Vs that are currently seeing play too that don't rotate, right? So
yeah,
the numbers are good.
yeah.
And even, I mean, yes, you will need a modifier, but even with like a DC, you can start attacking turn 2 to knock out most things.
Yeah, it's not terrible. I just don't know if it's
No, no, I agree with that. It's just
better than anything.
it's playable, and I think a deck that doesn't care that much about its V Star power, that is a real option, and you can sort of imagine like we haven't had decks that really do this where they have like multiple V Stars that they can choose between in a game.
Hmm.
Um, that just doesn't normally work out that way. Some decks do, but not often. But you could see that as like an option in a deck if the attacker and bulk are deemed relevant enough that like you could, Star Guardian instead of Aerodactyl
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, that makes sense. What else? Anything else on that tier, or like the next thing I have is again a card that I'm not a huge believer in, but you've been trying to sell me on, so I don't mean to just keep bouncing it back to you, but there
So like something that's gonna happen on these two is like it's funny because like I play like meta all the time, but I'm way more of a brewer than you are at the same time. Um,
Absolutely.
so like, yeah, I can see like these types of episodes will probably work out a little bit more like that, which is fine.
Yeah, where I'm
Um,
I'm 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 getting you to convince like so there's full disclosure, there are what one so I have one, two, three, four, five, six. Is that only six? Wow, six cards left on my list, four of which I'm actual believer in, and two of which I need you to sell me on. So
yeah, yeah. So the next one, I mean, I think this is I don't know if this is on your list is one that I need to sell you on or just not on your list at all. But I think the Zacian V Star is playable.
that is one of the sellable ones. Yeah.
Um, and I definitely think that card is reasonable. I'm trying to just scroll to it on my set list that I have on my other screen here just to get everything correct. So the thing with this card is exclusively the V star for me, which is metal colorless 310, just 30 damage to itself, whatever. None of that really matters. Again, this is your deck doesn't use a V star ability. Here's one that one shots not literally anything, but with a choice belt one shots everything. Um, Intrepid Sword is still like a reasonable bench sitter, and there's plenty of game states where you like, you're doing whatever setup stuff, and you can end your turn going, all right, Intrepid Sword, draw three. Um, in a deck that doesn't have a ton of reliable like ways to deal with something extremely thick, uh, like maybe a non Rayquaza Lost Box variant, especially. This is something that you can use. You don't have a V Star in there already. You can set it up easily with Mirage Gate, and you can knock out something gigantic. Um, I know like Duraludon, as an example, is considered a pretty bad matchup for some of the Lost Box
hmm
variants.
hmm
This can easily just knock out a Dura through all of its protections, just kills it. There's a use right there, right?
hmm
And same thing, Lost Box, a decent number of games, your early turns, you don't have enough switch effects to go through your Comfies and attack with a Cramorant. So, Comfy, scoop up, Comfy. Okay, Intrepid Sword end my turn. So you're kind of telling your opponent like, yeah, you can chase the Zacian and take two prizes, which is downside for sure. Or you can start cutting my engine out, which is also like an interesting. It's not strict downside. It's a two prize, right? Like we've seen decks like that play Luminion to decent success as well.
I
Um,
guess. Oh, go ahead. I don't
no,
want to
just
interrupt.
just final thing is the first attack also is a shred, which those decks aren't walled by like a mill tank or anything, but
They are walled by Ice Cube.
that's the one. Yes, though this would already get through Ice Cube by being evolved. But you don't
Yeah,
have to use the V
okay,
star in
yeah.
that situation. But yes, exactly. So there's another. Yeah. So this sort of is like an anti, like it's just an answer to cards that can beat certain decks, both by one shotting things that are gigantic and normally wall you, or by going through safeguard type abilities. Um, when I say this card is good, this card is not a staple that's going to be in a ton of decks or anything, but it is something that I believe is playable.
Yeah, so and I'm probably being too simplistic in this regard, but or not even simplistic, but just like kind of where like my head is currently at in terms of Lost Box, in the sense that if I'm going to put V's into Lost Box and say I don't have a V star power, I'm playing a different card from this set.
Sure,
Actually, I'm playing
sure.
two different cards from this set
Sure, and I
before.
think those are all reasonable takes there for sure. I just think like there is again, this is not a card that is always going in your deck. This is a card that answers
Yeah,
a problem,
yeah. So that's fair.
which I think it has like again easily outlineable uses, and so you can find the use case for it. And if you identify in a game that this card answers or solves problems, and like it's not unreasonable to put this in your deck. In the lower stage is not like a bad card on its own. Especially there's already reasons to put Metal Energies in your Lost Box deck
Yeah,
as we go through the good cards in the set. Not even counting you already want to play them if you play Amazing Raikou, right? Or
yeah.
even the Amazing Zacian to kind
hmm
of keep going with that. There's plenty of reasons to put Metal Energies into your Lost Box deck already, and so that makes it even lower downside.
Yeah, no, I could be sold on it. It's like I said, it's just and like that's one of those game states where you're already talking about where even if you have him in play as a V star, it you don't even have to use his V star power, but it's nice to have the option to use his V star
Mm-hmm.
power or use something else's, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's
Again,
fair.
just it is strictly like if the metagame dictates this being good. It's
Yeah.
not a card that you just put in your deck proactively.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. I understand where you're coming from. The
Also,
other
it's
one
like
I
a
want,
free roll to get one. Just grab a
yeah,
copy.
that that's true. The other one I wanted you to sell me on, and I understand that the notion is that all of these have seen found a home somewhere, so this one may as well.
I don't
I
I don't have a lot to offer on this one. You're going to mention Radiant Charge Bug here, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, I have no idea how this is going to be good, but I think literally every Radiant has found a way to see play at this point.
Yeah,
And, they're all unique abilities. It's a bench sitter that just does things. Um, I don't know where the math lines up that this sitting on your bench and your opponent attaching something's going to change the world or anything. I have no idea. Uh, but at this point, after Radiant Alakazam has even seen play, I just they've all seen play. I just believe that there's a chance that this is good somewhere. Um, I'm,
oddly enough, there's only two that have not. I have
I'm
not that
looking
I've
up
not.
what they are to see if they're literally all have seen play, or if there's a couple that are so bad that I just don't know what they are.
There's a couple that have not seen play that I've seen yet. One I actually think is good, and we just haven't experimented with. The other one is just dog water. So I want to see
Okay.
when you get there.
Okay, yeah, I have them pulled up here. So I'll just go through them.
Hmm.
Radiant Heatran has seen play, is
Oh
decent.
yeah,
Radiant Greninja, insane card. Radiant Hawlucha, good card. Radiant Venusaur, works in the decks it's supposed to. Radiant Charizard, obvious. Radiant Blastoise, extremely good card. Radiant Eevee.
that's the one I think actually has
I
potential.
think
But
that, so I actually, when this set came out, I immediately grabbed one because it's like, oh yeah,
yep,
this card is actually pretty good. And it hasn't worked out, but there are certainly like homes. I could see that card seeing play in some sort of combo deck if it ever
yep,
works out that way. It just hasn't yet. But I mean, similarly, we've seen like, is it the Rapid Strike Sylveon that wants you to have a bunch of different types on your bench and was
yeah.
good? I mean, that's obviously an attacker doing damage, but it's not unreasonable to set up a bunch of different types on your bench and then get a bunch of free cards for it.
I think that's the kind of card that gets much better when something like Marnie rotates. Because right now the only hand destruction
Yeah,
format will be
yeah.
judge, and if that's the only thing, and like say people maybe people don't play it
I mean, I
because
think
they
like yeah. So people proactively put Marnie in decks that like don't need Marnie more
correct.
often they
That's
do
what I
Judge
mean.
for some reason, and it's like it's a one card difference. If hand disruption's good, it's good. Um, but whatever. I don't know. So we'll see. I agree with that though. I mean, yes, you're probably going to see less of it just by default though. I mean, I think personally, like I don't mind just swapping Marnie for Judge in most of my
I
decks.
agree. I'm just projecting masses as opposed
Yep.
to what I actually yeah.
Going through the rest of these real quick. I'll just save the bad one for last. We've got Radiant Gardevoir, Radiant Sneasler, Radiant Serena, Radiant Alakazam, Radiant Jirachi. All playable, all have been good, all have seen use. And then Radiant Steelix, the one that
Yeah.
is actual stone garbage.
Hmm.
I have nothing to say for Radiant Steelix. That has sort of hurt my argument, though, that's fine. One
I mean,
miss on how
if
many
you're
of
like
these there
one out of
are.
like 12, then I think you're okay.
Yeah, yeah. One of 13 so far is like definitely bad, and then the Eevee has not seen play, but I think could be playable. You're
Yeah.
also, as they print more of them, you do run into more competition for the slot, which also
Yep.
is problematic. Um, though most of them are like very narrow, which is good. I shouldn't
Hmm.
say most, but like a lot of them are very narrow, and they find their home where they're supposed to find their home. You don't just pick one of them to shove in your deck, which could be the issue with the Charger bug, but my argument is strictly that they've all found a way to see play. I'm gonna bet that this one finds a home somewhere.
It's low key good in something like the Hisui and Zoroark deck that
Sure.
if their stadium gets bumped and they're trying to like actually put damage counters on their things or to like make their damage better on the other side. Uh
I mean, and you're working. So in that deck, a lot of times you play Halucha to fix math on VMAXs, and this
but
can
if,
sort of do the same thing because they have to attach to their VMAX. So
yeah,
this, yeah. I mean, right there, you've found like again. Sometimes the use case is super fringe on these, but if one deck plays it, like that's good enough.
I mean this is a card I know that if I pull or like if I see just like and it's like free, like I'm gonna take it
Same thing
because
as
like
the Zation. It's going to be a free
yeah,
roll. Get one, hold on to it.
there's no reason for
You
it to
might
like
as well
ship
own
me.
one of every Radiant. Like even just get the Steelix. I have no idea
Oh,
how it could see playable, but might as
I
well just
have a
have one of
Steelix in my
everyone.
box. I will never sleeve it up, but I have a
Yeah,
Steelix in my
and
box.
I actually, funny enough, I have a Steelix. I pulled it one of the weeks I took packs at locals. I don't have the Sneasler because I've never played any of the decks that's good in, but maybe I'll change that.
I well, Sneaser's the whole thing that makes like like
Yeah,
Eternatus
I
or like
just don't
yeah.
have. I don't.
I get it. Yeah.
I don't know when I'll play those cards.
Why? Poison's cool.
Okay. Anyways, so I've tried to sell you on those. We can talk about the good cards next.
I like that. I like good cards.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not. I think I'm missing at least one of the ones you have on here.
How many? So wait, how many cards do you have left?
Three,
Yeah. So I think I'm
two.
just more bullish on one than you are.
All right. Lay it on me. You go with yours. And let's save the ones that I'm gonna assume we both have on the list at least for last. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm
mostly because
very
I can
strong.
spend a long time talking about a couple of these cards. So
Yeah, and I'm 99% sure they're the same.
yeah.
I think Rotom V Star is at least worth talking about.
Okay. Yep. Me too.
That wasn't one of your remaining ones.
That was the debatably third one. I
Okay.
actually had kind of crossed it off my list because I was talking about it yesterday already for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't know that card's going to. I I don't think it's the exact same level of play rate or the same level of good as like the aforementioned Hisuian or V Star was, but I do think that it's the kind of deck that if I saw in day two of a regional or something like that, I wouldn't be terribly stunned. It hits a good weakness.
mhm,
It's seen play already in Japan, and it just
mhm.
for whatever reason we didn't get it. Um, I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
worth trying.
Oh, I think it's for sure worth trying. It can hit really high numbers, like you said. It hits a good weakness, though. I mean, Dunsparce doesn't rotate, so good luck. Um, but I mean, I'm sure we can find a way in our Lightning deck to deal with the bench Dunsparce.
Real quick for anyone, because I obviously am bad at doing this, but
Yeah, me
Rotom
too.
V Star, yeah. So we already had Rotom V, which I guess I'll mention that because they do go hand in hand. So Rotom V, it has an ability. Once during your turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you use this ability, your turn ends. Like you just said about Zacian V, a reasonable thing in the early game whenever you're still getting set up.
Mhm.
And then their attacks are very similar. So for Lightning, the V does 40 damage plus you may put any number of Pokemon tools from your discard pile into the Lost Zone, and you do 40 more for each. The difference between the V and the V Star is that the V Stars is 80 plus 40 for the same effect. And then the V Star also has a V Star power conversion star that discards any number of cards from your hand and then draw that many cards. Obviously, there to just kind of dump out any tools you don't need, or just like to boost that damage up so that you're able to kind of plow through from there. I don't know, like
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Especially because
there's an
like the
abundance
V
of tools right
Star
now.
the V Star is good. Is it better than like some of the other? I mean, you need to put them into your discard pile, so it's obviously good here. But it's interesting that like there's a lot of situations where this will be worse than like the Zoroark V Star power.
Yeah,
But I mean, you just have to make do. I guess you're not going to put worse cards in your deck just to have that extra V Star. I mean, the challenge here is setting up the number of items in your tools in your discard pile that you need, right? Because I mean, Lugia is easy to kill without Dunsparce because of the weakness, but a
yeah.
lot of other V Stars. I mean, so what's your game plan here? Are you trying to hit like 120 one turn, 160 the next turn? Are we two shotting because we're frail? We're only 250, or are we trying to like
Yeah,
turbo 5 of these into our discard pile each time we need to? Because you also lost some of them, so that's difficult as well, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like, how many tools do you play? How are we getting them in our discard pile? It's a deck builder's kind of not dream, but it's a fun card to deck build with because it's an interesting puzzle to solve. And I mean, yeah, again, the damage is good, the V Star power is good. There's a lot of good tools. It's another one of those decks. It's just how do we set up? How do we do it? And I guess I'll ask you. I saw a Japanese list. I've only seen one. What's your game plan on how to set it up? Do you like
yeah.
the? Well, I'll let you go.
Okay. No, I was just saying I was in the process of looking up Japanese lists as well, and I have not
So I'll
found.
talk
I
about the
know it.
one that I saw. It was
Yeah,
playing the single strike tools and using Tower of Darkness, so you can discard with those, dig through your deck a little bit more. Um, but then, other than that, I mean, the only way it was putting the tools into your discard was through its researches, Serenas, the V Star power. Um, I don't know, and that's fine. But the tools also don't do anything when you're playing. Like you're just playing like 5, 6. They might have been playing more. I think it was more like 8 bricks just to make your stadium work as well. Um, I don't know. So to me, something that would be interesting would be doing like Pokestop and potentially like a Celebrations Mew engine to dig through your deck. That only works till Scarlet Violet, but as far as finding your tools, the Pokestop will just put them in your discard pile in the future. So that actually is debatably better. Um,
yeah.
because
I was
it,
actually going to call out Pokestop as the stadium with that in mind, already
yeah,
like thinking
yeah.
like that.
I
But yeah,
mean, so
either
like
way,
right now, you put them in your hand, and then you get an extra card when you discard your hand with Rotom's V Star power, or whatever you discard them when you research. Um, the issue I find is that you only get to V Star once, and so are we just hoping to hit enough tools into our hand each turn and then research, or what? is there a real possibility here to play like a Curlia or a Cinchino to like make do them into our discard? Is that too clunky? Because now we're taking deck slots away from
Yeah.
tools and dig abilities. Like the best thing in my head so far has just been to play like these, like the Rotoms, Muse, maybe like Crobat, Luminion, the good ball search so you can discard them. Trekking shoes, Pokestop, a bunch of maybe just like eight discard draw supporters plus some bosses. I don't know. Um, and then just like play the good tools, right? You get to play a bunch of big charms, a bunch of choice belts, a bunch of air balloons. I'm sure there's some other just like you can play parasols if it's good
hmm
somewhere and for this deck. So I mean, there's good tools. That's not like finding tools to put in your deck's not the issue. It's finding a cohesive game plan.
Yeah, I think that when we like, I think whoever figures this out, if they figure it out before we do, which is very likely because there's
Oh
no
yeah,
way
yeah,
either of us are going to grind with this a ton, especially right off the gate. I think we're going to like the way the deck list looks, other than having like 17, 18 tools in it, because I think
yeah.
it's
Well,
going to be
they're
playing stuff.
bricks. They don't
Yeah,
progress your game state. But I mean,
so
I think yeah. Go
we're gonna
ahead.
hate that, but we're gonna like the trekking shoes, which I assume will be in there, and
For
the
sure.
Pokestops, which I assume will be in there. Or if they play the Tower of Darkness, I know both of us
We just
have
like that
really
card,
enjoyed
so we'll
that
be into
stadium.
it. And I
So
think I think funny enough, we'll
yeah,
end up working on this more than we're thinking because it sounds like one of our friends is interested in the deck. So we'll probably end up working a bit on the brew as well.
I also think one of the kids at locals really likes this deck and has wanted it since he saw it got cut from Lost Origin. So even if we're not, I assume he'll be talking to us about the
Yep,
deck. So I wouldn't be surprised by that either way. So I do think that this is a card that's going to remain on our radar, even if it is not something that we play.
agree.
So I'm fascinated. You said you have two cards left?
Yep. So I'm missing one of the ones that you have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it most likely answer is that I didn't read the card, I skipped past it on accident, or
I
I
don't
am
think so because
miscounting.
we've talked about all three of these
Or
cards.
I
So
forgot to put it on my list, which is equally
all
likely.
this possible. So why don't you start? Go. You pick the next one, and then I'll pick one from there.
Okay, well, I mean, my next one, this card's very bland, so there's not a ton to talk about with it, but it's very good, so I'll just bring it up, is the Revenge Zamazenta.
Yep.
Um, Another one up there with the Bidoof and running for potentially the best card in the set.
Yeah.
And yet again, not really an exciting card, an exciting ability, but it's very good, right? And so what the Zamazenta does is first off, it's got the ability Metal Shield, which makes it take 30 less damage from attacks. It's 130 HP basic. And then its attack is Metal Metal Colorless, Revenge. It does 100 damage additionally, or it does 100 damage, I'm sorry, if any of your Pokemon were knocked out last turn, it does 120 more damage. I was going to get those backwards. But, so this attacks back as a one prizer for 220. It's fairly thick at that point, too. It has to take 160 damage to die. You can obviously augment that if you wanted to, though I doubt you would want to put anything to make this thicker. 160 is pretty good most of the time, especially for a basic. And, 220 is a lot of damage, especially when you're doing like trading with Cramorant in this, over two attacks, that'll kill most three prizers or most buffed up defensive two prizers. So you're able to take key knockouts, prize trade really efficiently. And a lot of times I feel like these like revenge type attacks are awful if you didn't get knocked out last turn. If this one like survives an extra turn and you just attack again for 100, that's fine too. That's not bad. So this
Yeah.
card's really good. It's obviously seen a lot of play in Japanese Lost Box lists already, and I don't expect that to change here, especially since, as I kind of alluded to earlier when we were talking about Zacian V-Star, we started to see metal energies in our Lost Box lists anyway already as we've moved towards like the Raikos and that sort of thing. So, I think it's just a slam dunk that this card sees play.
Yep. Yeah. As somebody who loves Lost Box, I'm excited for this card just because it just answers some of the problems that you've like been playing. I don't want to say bad cards, but bad cards to answer. Like the fact that this just immediately can one shot. It just is so much better at one shotting Stoutland V, which is such a priority for Lost Box decks. And it kind of like because it can then tank something like unless they're swinging with a Lugia, like none of their one prizers other than Evital. I'm gonna stop talking because the one prizers can't answer this, but the Raikou can't. Yeah, I'm sitting there saying I'm like, wait a minute, but
Wait, Charizard kills it. Wait,
yep,
Yveltal
yep,
kills it. Wait.
yep, yep,
But yeah,
yep.
I mean, Raikou doesn't, which is great because that means the Raikou doesn't take two prizes back on you. Amazing Raikou, 110 HP?
Yeah.
So, with Goon, this can one-shot that as well, which is, actually really relevant because you don't want to have to... Like, one of the problems with this card is that it's going to demand switches to get out of your active or it's going to be extremely taxing on your energies. But with Goon, it still kills the Raikou because they still may present that to just attack this and kill something on your bench since you can't easily answer it.
Yeah.
So that, you're forced to have the Goon still, which I think you would play anyway. I think there's a couple different cards that are 230 anyway. So
Well, wait a minute. You just said so. You're saying if the Raikou knocks something out on your bench,
oh,
because
it's a
then
great
that's the
point. Yeah, this just attacks for more. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking
So
it has
it's
to kill your active Pokemon for some reason, which is not how that
no,
works. Yeah, no, you're
yeah.
great point.
So I don't know. I think
I mean,
that
see.
it depends on the way. Like I think we're adjusting the way we're building Lost Box in general anyway. But I do think that this will 100% find a home
Yeah,
in,
I
in
mean
probably whatever
it's
the competitive
interesting
version
when
is.
you say that because like I'm still not convinced that like Rayquaza Raikou Lost Box is strictly better than Kyogre Lost Box. I
I'm
think
not
both
either.
decks are very good, but I mean I think like obviously in any version that you're going to put metal energies in, you're going to play this card, right? So like there's
Yeah,
slam dunk right there. Basically, if you're playing an amazing rare engine in your Lost Box deck, you're playing this card. Um, it's interesting whether that also could include the option of putting metal energies in this and whatever that opens up with the energies you already have into like the Kyogre version. I don't know. That's like I'm not trying to get into specifics here with that one.
yeah, no,
But I mean, I think that's always one of the fun things about Lost Box is what Mirage Gate gives you access to. So you can fit this into your Lost Box list as long as you can fit the requisite number of energies. I mean, first off, Lost Box decks have gotten outrageously greedy with this. So like, I'm positive I'm going to see lists playing this with exactly 2 metal energies in it,
yeah. I don't like that.
which I hate.
Yeah,
But I just know I'm going to see it, and I know I'm going to be angry. But that's fine, whatever. But yeah, I mean, as long as you can fit a couple metal energies in there with your Mirage Gates, this works, right? So,
yeah,
you're basically always playing Energy Recycler or Ordinary Rod or whatever. So, I mean, I just like 2, but maybe 3 is enough to make everything happen that we need to do. So,
yeah,
I think that this is again debatably the best card in the set, and along with the Bidoof, the most guaranteed to find success.
yeah, for sure. Then I'm going to pick the card next that I think you probably forgot based on where we're, or
Yeah,
not forgot, or
I probably
forgot's wrong, but
forgot.
just
No, where we at? What you got?
Sky Sealing Stone.
Oh yeah, I just
The
forgot to put it on my list. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I like that's another card that when
It's
it,
funny because you alluded to it earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, of course that card's insane, and I just forgot to write it down.
oh, yeah, so it's another one of those for anyone that has been paying attention to competitive play lately with the what is it, Forest Seal Stone that has seen a lot of play in Mew, and then Vikavolt lately. It is a tool card that you can put on any V, and it gives them the V Star power Star Order. You may use this ability during your turn. During this turn, when damage from an attack of your basic Pokemon V knocks out your opponent's active Pokemon V Star or V Max, take one additional prize card this turn. Obviously, that is very specific, and then it has to be on your basic V and their V Star or V Max. But taking additional prize cards is a broken effect in this game. And in something like the Kyogre Lost Box that is playing the Dragonite, if that is knocking out like a Stoutland and you're using your V Star power that turn that
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't usually use, uh, taking 3 prizes on a Stoutland absolutely mitigates the risk of you're giving up 2 prizes with the Dragonite because you're
Yeah,
cheating another prize out.
I
Or
mean,
like,
even if you just kill the Lugia with it, if they're not playing V-Guard Energy, you just choice band, kill Lugia, take 3 prizes. Like the
yeah,
options
because
are
you
there,
can.
especially with the Dragonite.
I was gonna say because you can put that that tablet can go on a different V Pokemon, and like
Mhm,
it wouldn't shock me if you're seeing something like some of the lists already. We're playing things like Raikou V and
mhm.
Dragonite V, and sometimes Luminion V because getting that Koros is that important.
Right,
Or if
and that one can jump out anyway. It's not as risky.
yeah, and then additionally, something that we've seen in recent weeks because of the emergence of Vikavolt is a Galarian Zapdos V. Like, I don't know. I think that this card is there's going to be highlight reel moments. I don't think that it's necessarily the best V Star power that every deck is going to have access to. But if you split the difference between maybe one of this and one of the Forest Seal Stone, and then kind of pick and choose your spots, or like in a deck that already has a V Star power, like that Zacian you're already talking about,
Yeah,
if
yeah. You
like
same thing. You pick your spots. There's some matchups or some situations. That's something I've been very interested in that we haven't seen work out. Definitely is the like multiple V Star angle, which like the Arceus decks do it with like Aerodactyl and Arceus, but really that's about it right now that I can think of. Um, but yeah, I think this card is very good. I think like part of the issue or question we're gonna have to ask and figure out is what do you need to play as far as Vs for this to be good? And is it worth playing additional Vs if what you already have in your list is enough? So just like as an example, the deck we have right now for what we use the Kyogre Lost Box, it has exactly 1V in the list currently, just Dragonite. Um, and as is, the players who have worked on that deck did not deem that enough to play a Forest Seal Stone, just as an example. Is just Dragonite enough to play Sky Sealing Stone as one of? Probably not, right? Now, let's say we change the electric attacker to Raikou V instead of a Zeraora. Is that enough now? Is playing two of them enough? Is that good? Um, would it
So
have? Is that better than playing Forest Seal Stone? Like, I think so. I think in that situation it is. But I'm just kind of asking questions that I think are important to think about with this card.
I think, and this is relevant not only because it's already a deck in the format, but because of the last card we're going to be talking about. I think the Duraludon is going to see an increase in play coming forward,
Mm-hmm.
and for like the Kyogre player said that one of the biggest selling points of the Dragonite, just beyond being able to answer Stoutland and things like that, is because it gives you it tilts your Duraludon matchup so much because hitting for 250 to be able to like do a substantial amount of damage to a Duraludon is so relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you tell me I get to do that and take an additional prize, and then all I have to do is KO one Arceus, gosh, that makes that matchup so free. Or not free, but like so much like that goes from being a bad, really, really bad
Probably
matchup
to a
to being,
solid matchup, right? Right.
I would say probably favored. And like that's the kind of swing that I like can really just put like Vault like Lost Box is already like one of the most played decks in the format, but I think that this could even increase it, and I think that that's something to look forward to.
That's interesting. I guess to me, I don't feel like this is a card that swings the play rate of Lost Box, but I mean, I do think there are certainly matchups that this can be the card that swings you in for sure.
When I say play
Um,
rate, I could see it flipping. Like, I mean, if you combine the variants, it's already it would be second,
mhm.
but like, I
I
think that this hammers at home as being more played than Mew.
No, that's fair. I think that, yeah, I guess I already consider it to be the second most played deck because I'm adding
Fair.
the variants together. But yeah, fair. Um, no, yeah, that's interesting. I guess to me, the only reason that there's some like trepidation there is that this doesn't line up well with. I mean, I know you mentioned like some people do play the Raikou V, some people do play the Galarian Zapdos V. So I guess if you think those cards are good already, this lines up. But I think about like Pablo's list from San Diego. I Is there a single card in that deck? Did he play a single thing you can put this on? Prior to this past weekend, um, debatably there was a Drapion in the deck sometimes, but other
Yeah.
than that, the Grantazol, etc. list also played zero targets for this.
Yeah.
So you have to make the concession that you think this ability is strong enough to put cards in your deck that it works on as well,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily true.
Yeah.
I mean, that being said, like we already talked a lot at different points about how playing the Drapion makes the Mew matchup super favorable for Lost Box. It like goes from being probably 50-50, maybe one deck is slightly favored. I think players of both decks will argue about that until the day they
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
But if you play the Drapion, it's obviously Lost Box favored. And can you imagine slapping this on a Drapion against Mew? Game's just over.
Yeah. No. It just is.
Like
So
you don't even need to play anymore. You have won. Congratulations.
yeah.
So that's interesting. There's definitely some value there. A lot of times, if they don't have the Dunsparce, Raikou V will be good enough to take a prize against the Lugia, so that's another way that you could flip prizes. Um, Galarian Zapdos, another good option, does knock out the Stoutland. God, I couldn't remember the card's name.
Mhm.
Can knock out Stoutland, so there's some benefits there as well. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. It just comes down to like Lost Box is obviously an always evolving deck. You can always put different attackers, different energies, like the right cards for whatever situation fit into the deck easily. So it just depends if like I think to me the V's would have to line up in a way where you want to play them already to play this card. I guess this card wouldn't make me want to put more V's in my deck. The exception there is if we think we want to play Dragonite no matter what for every matchup. And if we think that switching Zeraora to Raikou V is just like two Vs is enough that you would play this card, that seems like an easy low downside swap.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. And somebody that has bounced, but like, and obviously the higher end players have as well bounced from every lightning attacker in this
Mm-hmm.
format. So like, and I don't know which one I like the best. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think they all have their merits. So
Sure.
like, if I'm already considering that, if I already think Dragonite has the potential to be very good in that deck as well.
Yeah, and everyone who's tried it seems to think that it's insane.
So say there's a world where I agree with both of those, where I think Raikou is close to equal to Zeraora, and I think Dragonite is almost a lock to be in the deck. If I don't
Yeah.
think two is enough, but I think three is enough, it's not that, like we already said, it's not that hard of a leap to get to play the Luminion because being able to search
Right,
coldness
right.
is so good. And then I think like I don't
No,
know. I
yeah,
think that
it's not hard to put the Luminion in. It's not hard to put the Drapion in if you think that
yeah,
there's like
that's
a
yeah.
weekend where
So
you have to beat Mew, or if there's going to be Mewtwo V Union decks at your
yep,
tournament. I mean, yeah, so I think I agree with that, right? Because you definitely need enough targets for it to be good, but that's not that hard to do. It's just getting there, I guess. You have to make sure you put them in your deck and then find space for this. And something that also is interesting, like we talk a lot about how you can fit whatever you want into Lost Box or play whatever you want in Lost Box. Interestingly, and very counterintuitive to that, space is really tight. There's so many cards that you like have to play, and suddenly it's like, oh, I'm cutting search cards, I'm cutting switch
yeah.
cards, I'm cutting, so it is easier said than done to put another what is a brick as far as setup goes in your deck because you're almost certainly cutting a card that helps set up. But you also maybe can put this in place of an attacker because you need one less prize when you play this card. So
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
speaking of things that adds bricks to Lost Box, but also possibly a higher ceiling.
Yeah, you want to talk
Uh,
about Radiant E-Turn? Let's talk about
it's
Radiant E-Turn.
I mean, I don't even like I don't know that I'd necessarily at this point argue that it's the best card in the set because, like you said, I think we can already
No,
there was other
I don't think it's
candidates.
the best card in the set. I think it could be. It has the highest ceiling of any card in the set.
It is certainly my favorite card in the set to think about.
Yeah,
It looks
for sure.
so much fun. So it has Radiance is the one protecting, as you're probably aware if you've heard us talk about Pokemon for this long. Its ability is Climactic Gate. Once during your turn, when you play this card from your hand onto your bench, you may search your deck for up to two Pokemon VMAX and put them onto your bench, and then your turn ends. And then for Fire, Dark, Colorless, it does 200.
It's kind of funny to me that the attack is reasonable.
Like if it like
It
if
could
this
have
card
just
was all
not had an attack. They could have printed it with like
just the ability,
it could have
they
made it
could.
like 3 energies, 10 damage, flip a coin. If tails, this attack does nothing. I would have been like, oh yeah, that's a reasonable attack for it to have.
I was gonna say you could make it Ditto where it literally just has the ability and that's it,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
no
yeah,
other.
yeah.
But and like I would have been like, yeah, no, I'm intrigued.
Sure.
But like the fact that it has both is I don't know. I think that this is the kind of card that I'm so excited to play around with. Like obviously, like it's seen some success in Japan already with Duraludon VMAX and Flying Pikachu VMAX, and I think that that's very reasonable. But like there's a world of possibilities. It could be Shadow Rider Calyrex. It could be. I'm like
So
I'm
there's
trying to think of
like,
some.
so there's the obvious things you can do with this, which I think we'll probably talk the most about. But like, obviously, you can put it into Arceus decks and just like arc onto Pikachu and Duraludon, right? So you can sort of play like Arc Dura or Arc Peak, but you get to pick what you're putting energies on. Great. Obviously, you can put this into Lost Box where you can find any energies you want. And same token, obviously, you can put this into Lugia where you can find any energies you want and power things up. Cool. The most interesting things this does to me are, like you just mentioned, Shadow Rider, which is a
Mhm.
deck that wants to put a couple VMAXs onto its bench, and this just lets you cheap those out there. You skip the setup step. They're gigantic. They're not getting run over immediately. And now you've got two Shadow Riders into play, and you can go off. And the other one, this is a deck that we don't like, but I actually do think that this card could make this see a little bit of resurgence, is Kyurem. Just cheat a couple of those into play, or even one in an Ice Rider. I think that's interesting. You do give up Radiant Greninja in those decks for this, but that's just really powerful, right? Anytime you're putting a couple of VMAXs into play. Something that's interesting, too, just from like a gameplay perspective. Yeah, this gives up a prize and doesn't do anything in a lot of those decks, but you're putting two three prizers into play. So,
It
like,
doesn't. Yeah.
it doesn't change prize math unless you present a two prizer. Um, you can present another one prizer, even. Like, it's very interesting. So I think there's something there for sure. I think that like the ability to put some of these VMAXs that do set up for you into play has a lot of upside. So I guess what are you most interested in doing with this card? I think we can talk about a lot of different things, a lot of different decks, and I'm excited to start building with it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like there's even bad decks that you didn't talk about that are almost certainly still bad, but like
Actually, I missed one that I thought would be that's another thing you can do with it too, which I don't think this fixes that. I feel like you can put two Regielekis on your bench.
but that was what I was gonna say, right? Is there's
Yeah,
Regieleki,
I mean,
there's
yeah,
the
if you go first with like Reggie Vikavolt, like you just put your Vika into play, manual attach one energy, Eternatus put two Electies on your bench. Okay, but like deal with it.
there's where did it go? I just saw it now because it's obscure, but it's oh, Orbeetle VMAX, which has seen it saw niche play
Oh
during the
yeah, yeah,
pandemic,
yeah.
which is neat. I don't know if it's good, but it's certainly neat. Uh, and then this is something that I would want to try. it's still probably bad, and I don't even think I'd play. I mean, might play one of the energies because it's also the same energy that goes into uh Eternatus. The draw power of Rayquaza VMAX and just
Okay, so that's on my list is a card that you could just get with this. You just put it in a deck and then
yeah.
get Rayquaza. Um, along with whatever your like attacker is, you just get Ray as like your setup guy. The issue is that the Ray is so hard to attack with unless you build your deck around
Oh
it.
yeah, I'm never attacking
But
with it. It's just a power through.
I mean, there is an interesting like use case there though, where you put two Rays on your bench and actually do play the Rayquaza deck, right? Like just power it up from there, do
Hey
your thing.
Dave,
Yeah.
real quick, this also answers the question. Like, I mean, obviously this is gimmicky as all get out, but that answers the question about what you would do with the Rotom V Star, right? Because you're like, how do I continuously discard my tools?
Oh yeah, you get Rayquaza off this. That's a great idea.
That's a great bad idea that I will probably waste
I
some
feel like
hours
we have
on.
to try it. Yeah, it's
A
pretty cool,
hundred
right?
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that's why I like this card. I don't necessarily think that this is. I mean, I do think this will see some amount of meta play, but I don't think it's meta changing overall. But it's a really fun card.
It's an extremely fun card. It's extremely interesting.
Hmm.
And this has just an insanely high ceiling. So like something that I think is really cool, like just from like the fair uses of it, would be like you play this in like an Arc Peak deck, except you also get to play uh Coco VMAX, but you don't have to play all the setup, basics for both of those cards. You just use this, put them on your bench, and go from there. You get to pick what spot, what VMAX is best for you. In a deck like an Arceus, you can pick any of the random colorless VMAXs, put them on your bench too. You don't have to spread your energies too thin anyway. You still can just set up and go from there.
Cutting those
Um,
spaces allows you to actually put Espeon VMAX in there more
mhm,
reliably, which
mhm.
is even like very relevant. So yeah, I think that this is very cool.
Yeah, and it also like in matchups where maybe like a Crobat VMAX is good in your deck, but you don't want to bench the Crobat V to give up prizes earlier, you can use this to just put the VMAX down. But then you can still evolve it if you're playing Crobat V, so it's like even less downside, but you're able to kind of accelerate your game plan without risking the two prizer, since we're kind of talking about how the prize math is interesting here. Um, yeah, I mean, the Espeon, that's another great point. I'm trying to think if there's any other setup cards that I haven't talked about yet that I think are really cool with this. I'm not seeing any.
None
Um,
come to mind, but I'm sure I mean, there's been VMAXs for a few years that we may just be
yeah,
forgetting
yeah,
things.
exactly. But I think that there's so many things you can do with this that it is super interesting, and the ability again just to put this into like existing shells. Like the one that I think is probably the coolest and simultaneously the worst is putting it into Lost Box and just using the normal engine here to set up. But
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm going to try it
oh, you have
because
to, right?
I'm a Lost Box fiend, and
If
also
you
this
want to
card's
get
cool.
really, really wowed on there, though, you can use the Lost Box engine to power up the Rayquaza VMAX very easily. Extra
You,
draw power, Lost Gate or
ooh,
Mirage Gate onto it.
it's, yeah, I mean, the issue is like that's going to take very little for me to be convinced to try
Yeah,
because I
just to
love
try because it's
Rayquaza.
cool.
Yeah, I love Rayquaza. That deck always felt like it was so close, but actually not close, but also kind of close. So
Yeah, no, we tried that right when it came out. That was roughly when I started playing again, and we built that deck and tried it, and it was like, man, this is like a couple really good cards from being good, and it never got those.
no, it never did. But maybe
the
this time.
The thing that I think the most about with this card actually though is I know we're kind of mixing current and rotation thoughts with these cards, but at rotation I think this card gets even more interesting
Hmm.
because I think the best thing Lugia can do after rotation right now is play like the single strike or rapid strike, whatever energies, because those are the only rainbow energies we're gonna have available. And both of those archetypes have a lot of VMAXs,
Yep.
and you can definitely use this to put, so just as an example for single strike, without having to stretch yourself too crazy, because you get to play 8 energies that are good. You can play all of Duraludon, Gengar, Urshifu, and Umbreon. And Umbreon's not great to get off of this. You would rather evolve into it, but if you need to just put a dark attacker on your bench, you can grab Umbreon. If you wanted to play that instead of playing Gengar, just as like an example, you can use the Umbreon instead, since if it's hitting for weakness, it's killing things anyway. And you have those other attackers. So I don't know. I think it's really interesting that you have these archetypes that have all of these VMAXs right in them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's no way I don't experiment a ton with this card.
For sure.
It's kind of And like so like you just said earlier about yourself, as the brewer in you has to really love something like that because it's like there's so much room for
Mm-hmm.
activities here.
Yeah, I mean this is the kind of card. This goes back to something I said about Luxray, where it's like clearly an extremely powerful card. That does not mean it's an extremely good card.
Hmm.
Um, but this is clearly a very powerful card. Like this card is actually just insane. It is one of the highest ceiling cards I've seen in a long time. We do know the entire pool of cards this will ever be able to get. We're never getting another VMAX, presumably, barring some strange promo or whatever. But so we know exactly what we can do with it already. So we don't have to worry about like this getting more broken down the line, which is also cool. Cards like this being future proofed is good. You
Hmm.
want to release this card now and not have to limit design space later for it. This isn't a game design podcast, but you know.
Well, because it's absolutely the kind of card that if they did mess up, it could get really messed up.
And if they
So
printed this before all the VMAXs came out, I actually bet there would have been a lot of outrage at the printing because,
mhm.
well, what if, you know? And
Yeah.
what if is a good question with this. And it's one we don't have to worry about, which is really good. I
Mhm.
still can't get over the attack being relevant.
It's like,
Also,
but
like
like that's cool too.
170 is a lot of HP. Like, this doesn't even just, like, get sniped that often. This doesn't
You know,
just
it's a
die
good
to, like,
card.
yeah, yeah. It's just, like, uh, it's funny because like there's so many things here that are like insane, and it still isn't like a slam dunk good card because ending your turn is a big deal. You're putting things into play without the ability to power them up that turn specifically. Like, and that's why the thing in my head, you know, Lost Box and Lugia are obviously the two that really come to mind because you can. It doesn't matter that your turn ends; you can just power them up the next turn.
Also, starting this sucks.
Yeah, yeah, great point.
Like, like
Starting it really sucks. Exactly.
yeah. So I don't know. But it's one of those things that like obviously like if you're cracking product, you probably want to pack something that's worth a good bit of money. But cracking this is also exciting because you're like, well, I can get brewing. Let's brew.
Yeah, and I don't know what the availability on this set's going to look like, but I mean, the Radiant Charizard, the first printing of it, is still worth a decent amount of money. It's the only Radiant that's held any value, but this could be worth something.
Yeah, and there's another Radiant Charizard in this same thing, just different art. And
Yeah,
like yeah, I'm hoping that the pull rates on all three Radiants is pretty reasonable because I would
yeah,
like to not see them be outrageous. But yeah, who knows? But
yeah, exactly.
I think that puts a bow on the Crown Zenith discussion. Just quickly, your thoughts on
On
Liverpool this
Liverpool,
weekend?
yeah, I
Uh,
think we haven't seen a ton of movement in the metagame exactly. We saw some online results for the electric decks continue to pop up on there. You know, Arc Peak, Arc Coco, and uh, Lugia Peak was the most original and new thing that we've seen. Um, but I don't think we're going to see too much movement. We haven't had a ton of. I think we've only had one European event so far,
mhm.
so I expect we'll just see a lot of base level Lugia over there. Um,
And that just for the reminder that that event was won by Palkia Vikavolt. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that it goes back to that crazy weekend with all the counters.
um, they don't seem to like playing Drapion in Europe, so we'll probably see some more Mew than we have recently
Mhm.
in US events. I mean, Mew just got second here also, but you know, I think Mew will do well there. They also seem to like Fusion Strike Mew still. Sure, whatever you do, you're allowed to be wrong, but it's yeah. I mean, they'll definitely be playing those decks. I think we'll see some decent results from those. I think we'll continue to see results from Lugia, obviously. Uh, Vikavolt has been in a lot of finals. Do you think Vika shows up again there?
I think Vika's in the top cut. I don't know that it's necessarily in the finals.
Yeah.
So this is I think that my guess, and this is so it feels weird talking about a European regional and not talking about Tord winning. I think Tord will probably do well. Uh, if he's going, my guess is that Stefan's going to win, and it's going to be with Lugia with uh canceling Cologne in it. I think Cologne is about to see it come up.
For sure. I think Cologne is actually a necessary play in Lugia right now. There's so much
Yeah.
Aerodactyl running around. I think you have to play Cologne. And I think Cologne is interesting on top of that because Dura also is still kind of on the come up. And you don't have to do as much for the Dura matchup then. You still probably need some number of vacuums because you still really want to get a Parasol knockout or a knockout through Parasol with Yveltal, excuse me. Um, but like you don't need to play like multiple and have to try to figure out how you're
Yep.
gonna game yourself into a position where you can use Eve twice or anything like that or whatever. Um, I mean, I just think the Colognes are fairly low risk. I think something that goes with that because you're playing against Vikavolt most of the time, so you need to find this out immediately. Is like uh, I've gotten cute in a lot of my lists and played like a split of Serenas and researches. You probably just need to play like 4 research, go in and say I need to find my cologne this turn in those matchups, to clone the Aerodactyl, which is fine. It's just a little bit different. And I'm gonna guess that like we're gonna see, which could end up leading to good results for it, but we see a lot less respect given to Paralyze because you can't really fit both of those things.
Yep. So I wouldn't be surprised if like a Palkia deck made it into
Yeah, I
Top
wouldn't
Cut
either.
because of that. I don't really believe in any of the other Paralyzed decks right now, but I do think that
No, yeah, I
Palkia's gonna
say
be.
Paralyze, and I always mean Palk Articuno, but
Yeah.
I say Paralyze still because the electric deck was good that very first week of Lugia
Yep.
counters, and
Yep.
nobody has taken Dunsparce out of their deck since.
Yeah. Yeah. My guess in terms of if I'd be guessing like a top 8 breakdown would probably be like 2 to 3 Lugia, 2 to 3 Lost Box. I'll say 2 of each so that I can actually fit in 1 Palk, 1 Vika, Sander, and I don't know. Like I guess Dura. I guess I think that deck's bad, but it continues to see play,
Yeah, I
and they're
mean,
not really big on Reggie over there, so I don't think Reggie will
no,
be
I don't
that.
expect Reggie, and I think someone there is still going to play Dura, and that makes sense. Dura is a popular deck with people for whatever reason. I don't know.
They like not thinking.
They like not showering.
Yep. On that note, we will call for this week. So next week we'll be back and we'll be talking about the results from Liverpool and probably hopefully bragging, but also likely complaining about our pulls from Crown Zenith. And so yeah, we will catch you guys next week on Ancient Wisdom.
Thanks for joining, everybody.